Decipher Destiny, Decode God's Will by Santosh Jha. Copyright 2013 Santosh Jha. Thank you for downloading this free ebook. Accept my gratitude about the author. Other titles by the author. Thrilled to have you with me. I feel truly happy to tell you that this, I do not intend to be a book. Rather, it is like friends chatting up, sharing whatever we can together to enhance the wellness space. It is my humble belief that any person, in whatever state of consciousness and life positioning, is in some special ways better than a wisdom book, for the purpose of life and living learning. I must tell you, I have learnt, and more importantly, unlearnt, primarily from people. Books somehow are people matter in text format. We shall talk about how we all can decipher the unpredictable destinies, which unfold to us, without we having any inkling about them. We shall also talk about how we can understand the happening of most of those probabilities, which come to us and which we refer as God's will, as we think. We have no control over them. However, first, we have to come down to one common premise, which shall help us is the fruition of the issue at hand, deciphering destiny. There has to be a humble admittance. Any word, however well meant and well spelt, is a possible suspect of misrepresentation. There is a simple reason. Do you remember when your flight is about to land, the pilot aborts the landing, jolting your peace, just because something as insignificant as a stray dog happens to be on the runway? You already know how similar is the fate of human words, which we all accept as the best and worthy carriers of human intentions. This airplane of human words, carrying good and noble intentions, need to make a good, smooth and safe landing on the runway of another human's mind and consciousness, which again is worthy and hugely able. Still, the good intention words sometimes fail to land on the mind of others, as there is some insignificant, yet potentially fatal obstacle standing midway the runway. It is believed, if the hypothesis is right, the idea is accepted as right. If two people have an assimilative and integrative attitude, one can easily see that root trouble is in subjectivity of the hypotheses. This helps in resolution of conflict of ideas. Friendship is one positioning, where assimilation and integration about divergent hypotheses has larger accommodative space. A seed is more objectively accommodative in space than a grown-up tree. Friendship is seed positioning. That is why, at the very start, I very affectionately request you to be my friend and accept this all as one long conversation between friends. Kindly, accept this not as a book but a confabulation between friends. This, I am confident, shall engender smoothness of navigation and fruition of the entire exercise. With all humility and sincerity at my behest, I wish to tell you that it needs to be said, there is only one person on the earth, who can say that he has understood. Otherwise, this domain is reserved for a metaphor called God. This is not available for humans. It is also a heartfelt realization that our very worthy ancestors, who had the intelligence and courage to face the worst, life made them to, so that we inherit a better beautiful world, have already said almost all good things. What I can do is present them in new set of words with novelty of references. The only justification of me telling them is that all goodness and wellness ideas and words need to be repeated and retold, to add to their all-pervasiveness. At the age of 46, I can say with innocence that getting old is such a beautiful and satisfying experience. It makes the self accept the utility and fruition of holistic, assimilative and integrative consciousness. Getting old has probably pushed me close to the eligibility of perhaps beginning to understand as what essentially is there to be understood. I chat up with you to share with you whatever is part of my consciousness. All wisdoms say, human is designed to live in state of flux, a state of instinctive semi-consciousness. To jolt oneself out of this, one must challenge itself, something humanity has done since millions of years. What stays with you is what sinks in. Wisdom is what we internalize. I share with you whatever I have internalized in my life. Why trouble God? You can do it. We always say, things shall happen when God shall ordain. Things do happen at some stage of time and circumstances, and we think God made it possible and thank God for making that happen. Then, things may not happen and we think, maybe God has something else in his mind. There is also many related aspects, which we are too happy to assign to God's will. Like, something unexpected happens and we say, it is God's way of endowments to those he loves. Or, it is some signal of God to lead us to something big and great. Life and living experiences are so randomized and full of infinite possibilities of precarious positioning that it is always very easy for us to accept God's hands in it. Our archetypal mind imaging facilitates this. There is actually nothing wrong about it. It is also something which is very natural to our consciousness. We have the mind training from childhood to accept that if anything happens, there has to be a purpose. And something must be there to move it. God is also in our mind consciousness since childhood, and it is only natural that when we cannot see any perceptible and tangible purpose and mover, we ascribe it to God's will. The trouble starts when this idea becomes a habit of procrastination and a psychotic belief that everything is there for God to move and we cannot or should not bother about things. This also blinds us to the clear and established patterns, which leads to discernible probabilities in life, which we can and we should manage ourselves, not bothering God for it. This is a huge facility for personal excellence, which we usually fail to pick up by assigning to God. Somehow, the question, which comes to mind, is it that things happened because in time, we evolved ourselves to such a point where it actually happened? Or, it did not happen because the necessary elements for its happening could not line up in a way it should have for it to happen? There is a way to take this all differently. We need to accept alternative viewpoints to ensure our personal excellence. We can feel and believe, God is my own intrinsic nature, my natural emotions, my instinctive me, and I am a constantly evolving potential. Naturally, my God is also in incessant evolution. Therefore, when I attain something, me and my God within, probably evolved to such a positioning, where this attainment could be made possible. The probability fell in my lap as I evolved to a point, where my God stood with his bounties and I got it. If I did not get it, probably because my evolution to such a probability could not match with the evolution of my God. Usually, it is not customary and convenient to question so many things, which we assign as something in the domain of God. It is truly amazing how much we delegate to God, without even bothering that majority of our delegation is actually out of the inertia of comfort, or simply lack of understanding of how this cosmic system operates and how we and our immediate milieus fit into this vast mechanism. The archetypal faith patterns, which we have inherited since ages, probably make us accept that almost nothing moves without God's intervention. The fact is, this faith positioning is completely against what core religion tells us. In all religions, there is a theme of destiny, but it is always concurrent with the theme of karma, the commensurate action behavior requirements to land at this destiny. If we objectively look at the theme of destiny, we shall find that it has larger utility in our secular societal domain, rather than purely world beyond value. There is a mechanism to all probabilities in life and in cosmic arrangement. The mechanism has its own energy and patterns of possibilities. Religion tells us that God created the mechanism, energized it and left it on the karma of individuals to attain what it could from this mechanism. Those who succeed and attain, decipher this mechanism, the patterns, which are there for anyone to see and work them towards their avowed goals. The wise have said since ages that a true religious person is one who assimilates the mechanism of God and works towards seeing its patterns for personal and societal excellence. The mechanism has its own energy, and as we align our personal energy in linearity with this energy of the cosmic mechanism, we attain success and excellence. It is like, I do think that I am ideal for the position of being the President of USA, but it is not happening for me. So I say, it shall happen when God shall wish. Years pass, and as I have this in my mind that I must be the President of USA, I am actually gradually moving towards this end with an evolution mechanism which even I cannot visualize as happening, because this energy, which is silently leading me to this probability, is intangible and in my subconscious mind. In reality, I am actually inching slowly and unconsciously towards that end. And one day, I do become the President of USA, and I thank God to make it possible for me. It is interesting to decipher that in reality, it is my own potential that I unconsciously chased, and it happened. What made it happen may be God's will, but it is my intrinsic nature which worked for me in silence, in subconscious and in innate me. My personal energy is subconsciously aligned with the patterns of the mechanism, which is already set up for being a president. Of course, the faith in the subconscious mind that God will is also with me, helped me in aligning with the patterned energy, which made the probability of being the president fall in my lap. If it could not happen, and if I die without being the President of USA, I would say, God ordained otherwise. It would happen otherwise, as probably, I could not evolve myself to be my God. Or probably, my evolution process was right, but physical circumstances had their own play, as it can happen to anyone. Probabilities are also dynamic and in constant evolution. Moreover, someone else too was evolving towards similar goal, and probably, his evolution to his godliness was greater and better than mine. So, my God submits to his God's wishes. It really does not matter who wins and who not. However, it is crucial that our gods must be our evolved potential, and it is truly infinite. Be assured, even if our own God fails to get what we wanted, it is sure the godliness shall be there for us. Even if I do not become the President of USA, it is for sure that I acquired all the goodness and qualities of a president. No God leaves us with empty hands. We just need to know our respective God, and that will fill us with all goodness that we all need to be happy and satisfied. Therefore, even when I fail to be the President of USA, I stand at par with the benchmark. I am there within the threshold of excellence. I only missed the probability, however. The excellence falls in my lap. Please do not wait for your external God to make things happen for you. You will get what God can give in seconds if you understand and accept that you, standing on the horizon of your true and ever-evolving potential, is your God. God has created the mechanism of absolute excellence for all of us. We need to have our own evolution right to reach at the point where our gods and we stand side by side. We can make this happen, as it is our domain, not God's. Patterns around us. Everything around us, be it our little home or the colossal cosmos, has a mechanism and a process, which makes the mechanism work. As this mechanism and process works, perceptible and discernible patterns emerge, which we all can understand and accept. God is unraveled and his will is deciphered in the mechanism, processes and patterns around us. The wise have said it that God is in details. If we open ourselves to this consciousness, where we can understand and accept these mechanism, processes and patterns around us, we shall not need to delegate all happenings to God. Of course, still loads of probabilities shall be there for God to handle, but we can make him happy by picking up those for ourselves, which we can and should do. As we do it, many of the probabilities of happenings become replicable and doable by ourselves. There is no need to trouble God to make it happen. With our personal inputs and with some calculated design of destiny, we can make many of these probable events and things happen. For example, an ocean is a colossal mechanism. It has a process and patterns. There are trillions of living organisms, and each one having its own destiny in the ocean. Each second, millions of organisms are killed and another millions are born and survive. There is a pattern of this killing and surviving in the oceanic food chain. God is not supervising all lives and each second of the lives of the trillions of organisms. We can say, God created a mechanism of oceans, infused oxygen into it to energize the mechanism and created a process of working of the mechanism called ocean. This mechanism evolves and patterns are created, which we all can see. Scientists have now known the working of the oceanic life cycles up to its deepest bottom. They have given us a pattern of how life works in oceans. Now, I can enter an ocean for fishing and someday I catch a big beautiful fish. I have a sumptuous dinner and I thank God for that. Another day at ocean, I catch a shark in my net and escape a certain death. I thank again the God for the escape, though with serious injuries. God is not interested either in my first thank nor in my second. He created a mechanism, which has all patterns and they stand in the ocean in neutral probability. It is destiny in my hand. If I understand the pattern well, I shall go to ocean well prepared. I shall carefully select the fishing zones and timings. I shall first gather all possible information available to gear myself up for a safe and successful catch, avoiding probabilities of accidents. The mechanism of ocean has both probabilities of a good fish and a shark in equitable proportions. If I am not prepared, I shall meet with a destiny, which the mechanism's own set of probabilities is there. If I am prepared well, equipped with the knowledge of the mechanism of the oceans and its multidimensional probabilities, I shall have a destiny of happenings, very much skewed in my favor. This way, I shall have the larger input in the destiny, which God's mechanism has in store for any person. God's will has to be neutral and unbiased as his mechanism is also objective, neutral and equal for everyone. The simple idea is, we have patterns all around us and these patterns emerge out of the processes of working of a mechanism, which has been created. This mechanism works equitably for all of us. We need to have our personal inputs to manage our own destinies of probabilities of the mechanism's possibilities on us. We have so many examples in our daily lives, where we see that if we have prepared ourselves well for multiple factors and have anticipated rightly the dynamic interplay of these factors, which are there in a mechanism, we are successful in having a smooth and safe go. For example, I am driving a car on the busy highway. Highway has its own mechanism, driving too has its own mechanism. Now, whether I meet with an accident or reach my destination safely depends very much on my own personal input, the knowledge of both mechanisms. Of course, the precarious probabilities of highway driving shall always be there. However, whatever shall be my destiny, it shall have larger inputs of my own preparedness and less of the probabilities of the mechanism of highway driving. Driving itself is a multitasking skill. Those who have better coordination of their eyes, hands and legs, shall be driver with lesser chances of accidents. This is however only one part of successful driving. You also need to have intuitive anticipation towards possible mistakes of not only your own driving, but also of others, who shall be ahead and behind you on the highway. You have to anticipate correctly and in time, if a driver ahead you does something silly. Accident happens not only when you do a wrong, but also when others do wrong with you. You are in trouble both ways. Moreover, on the highway, you need to know where those accident-prone zones are and where drivers usually make errors of judgment. There may be a signboards warning you, but you must have this pre-knowledge, back in your subconscious. It means, you must be very aware of the entire stretch of the highway. We can see how a simple thing like driving a car opens up so many probabilities for us, which are always there for anyone driving. While driving, we have to master the interplay of so many factors, which the mechanism has. Somehow, accidents can happen to anyone, even when he or she is best prepared. Still, for a driver, who understands the mechanism of highway driving better and is well aware of the patterns of highways as well as driving, has lesser probabilities of accidents. Knowing the mechanism and discerning its inherent patterns can mold the destiny in our favor. God's probabilities for accidents or safety are neutral as it is part of the mechanism. It is believed that some people are born with the quality of an intuitive mind. There is a belief that they could predict events from past and future. There is a cult of tantricism, an occult tradition as well as mainstream tradition of meditative powers to develop intuition, which was used to predict past and future. The core idea behind all these was to have a mind consciousness, which could have the receptive brilliance of discerning the ambient patterns of life-living mechanisms. It is clear that the ability to predict right about past and future, which masses called magic, the artistry is essentially that of a mind consciousness, which has special abilities of deciphering the patterns, which are intangible but can be unraveled. The aggrieved people would come to these magicians and tantric and tell them their problems. For example, a woman came and asked a tantric to trace his son, who had gone missing for last 1 year. The tantric listened to the woman and then closed his eyes. Minutes after, he said, he had the divine vision that her son is still alive and he left home on his own accord. Tantric asked the woman to search for the son in a place 500 kilometers east from the place he lived. The woman found her son after a year in a city around the same vicinity the tantric had said. I sat with the tantric and talked about all this. My friendliness to him made him say things, which he would not reveal to others. He said, when a person is in trouble, especially for long period, his or her natural abilities for rational thinking is eclipsed. People who generally come to us have little education or unsound reasoning faculties. They tell us everything. We then ask for some specific information about their trouble and about the environment, where the trouble started. We then close our eyes, sit in a meditative consciousness of complete reception. All these information we leave with this meditative unconscious mind for churning. We have evolved this facility to switch off our conscious mind. The intuitive unconscious mind has a strange facility of doing its own strange mathematics and pattern building. It does its own interpolation and even extrapolation. It may take some minutes or few hours, but the unconscious mind finally puts all these information into a template of sorts, where we can see pictures of past and future arranged in a particular order. We then use the faculty of the conscious mind to create a pattern or sequence of events. On this basis, we predict and it usually comes true. There are great similarities between what the tantric did and what doctors used to do 50 years back. Then, there were little specialist diagnostic tests of modern times available to the doctors. For diagnosis, they had to depend largely on the symptoms the patients described of his troubles or any external symptoms visible. The most popular doctor was one who could diagnose the disease correctly. Many of the doctors of old school used the power of intuitive mind to diagnose the diseases correctly. Many of them practiced the art of meditation, worships and even playing musical instruments to attune and align the mind towards a state of high reception. They depended heavily on details and then used the intuitive minds to work out a pattern, which would then help them in predicting the right diagnosis. Somehow, we all do it in one form or the other. Just visit a casino to see how the master gambler is the one who is sharp and prompt enough to predict a pattern in all games and make the right choices. It is our mind, which is constantly doing the calculations of the permutations and combinations, scattered all around us. The interpolative and extrapolative mind consciousness is a random facility of mind, which we all can master. The mechanism and its pattern works on its own accord. The probabilities, which emerge out of the processes of the mechanism, is what we can say as common destiny for all who are part of this mechanism. God is neutral as his mechanism is neutral. What falls in our laps as destiny of probability is a function of how much personalized input we can assign to the working processes of the mechanism. We cannot avoid the destiny, as we are part of it. However, we can alter the probabilities of destiny by adding our personalized input. It will never let you down. There always is a lurking realization that mathematics is at the core of understanding what all human endeavors are all about. Why only human? Everything in this universe has a calculative brilliance about it. The unconscious mind has this well placed and ever willing to assist the conscious mind with it. Success also is nothing but a calculative arrangements and juxtaposition of some random elements of life-living situations, in a particular pattern, which at a particular linearity of time and space fetches optimum utility. Deciphering and then replicating the pattern is success code. We all do our mathematical patterning. In common parlance, everyone and everything seems to be toying up with the idea of useful and redundant, profit/loss, computation. Nothing seems to rise above the inevitability and universality of calculations. And, it actually fuels the energy of life and living ingenuities. There seems a quintessential trend, which lands math in the core of cosmic endeavors. The world around us is a constant and infinite interaction between nature and nurture. The former is a randomized energy whereas, the later is a calculated and planned one. In nature, things are usually highly randomized and very hard to calculate a pattern. In nurture, humanity has always looked for establishing some pattern. As much about evolution has been known now, nature always presented all living creatures with challenges, which were unpredictably randomized. The genius of humanity has been that it unraveled and established a calculative pattern in almost all such randomized eventualities, finally making these patterns part of its cultural mechanisms. This creative skill seems like basic mathematics, the calculative mechanism of pattern building. The road for humanity on mathematical path is long and tedious. The randomized nature within human body and mind, as well as the world around, still has lot more that needs understanding, and a measurable pattern building is the real challenge. The biggest challenge being the revelation of the mathematical pattern of the human mind, whose randomization still opens up more questions than answers. However, we all have this genius and ingenuity to see and read carefully and sincerely some pattern in all randomized issues and questions life and living situations throw upon us. If we accept that all randomization are beautiful and ultimately patterned, and they look puzzling and beyond us only till we do not decipher the inherent and inbuilt pattern. Once we unravel the calculative and measurable rule of this pattern, we have the mathematics of order and success. We all do our math and calculations, we all can do it, we know the basics and we all are intuitively good at it. We just have to be open, aware, respectful and sensitive towards mind's own randomization energy and use our higher consciousness as smart tool for calculative success in an objective way. We have done it since millions of years, shall do it all the more well in decades to come, as we all are on the threshold of unraveling the randomized mind's calculative mathematical genius. Trust your mind, tell your dear heart that mind is a true friend, it would never let you down, never ever, as this mind has the calculative brilliance to decipher all intangible patterns of life and living, which can make us successful and masters of our own destiny. As they say, God helps those who help themselves. We shall be helped more by God, when we shall do whatever is in our part and not unnecessarily delegate everything to God. We have not done it before, naturally, we have a trust deficit. It is because we have not truly known and understood this friend, called higher mind consciousness. Since long, it has been part of all popular culture to blame all human troubles on the devilish machinations of mind. We all are culturally trained to accept the mind as the source of all human conflicts. This is because we never ever understood the mechanism of the mind, and as we did not understand this mind, we never accepted it as our true friend. We are now in the millennium of new thinking, where we have the facilities to understand our mind consciousness and its multidimensional potentials, through holistic, assimilative and integrative perspectives. A completely new knowledge is knocking at our doors. We all need to understand the new friend. And as we do it, we would know how this mind mechanism opens up the doors of the myriad shades of consciousness, which was so far bracketed as mysticism. This new friend shall reveal to you the new thinking and techniques and calculative genius of consciousness. We have been in this mathematics of life and living for long, but this new technique shall land us all in a state of empowerment, which shall clearly distinguish the psychic from rationality and logic. The cosmic realism shall never change as it is what it is, but we all shall now have a worldview that would be based on the knowledge of the mechanism, the more as against a worldview based on the guesswork and mysticism of psychic realisms. The popular perception needs to go away. The devil is not in the mind, it is in the preoccupation of the culturally trained consciousness that mind is the troublemaker rather than a trusted friend. The devil is in ignorance of calculations. It is time for a new thinking over all human calculations. Obscure joys of entangled communication. Obscure is beautiful. Well, this was a common refrain decades ago when we were not living in a society fashioned by extremities of openness and transparency. The liberal world of bare all preferences may not adhere to this clique D, but, still, obscurity is a turn-on, a definite curiosity call, and still a staple feedstock for artists, mystics, and also scientists. What we know and is revealed to us is a boring proposition. Obscurity keeps the curiosity and interest alive and kicking. That is probably why men find wives as boring and girlfriends interesting, as later is still on the other side of the threshold of known and an idea muffled in obscurity. Sorry, no offense meant. Just an innocuous metaphor. Dabbling in obscurity is truly mesmerizing. It gives you the leeway for expanding the horizon of your imaginations and often illusionist interpretation of hypothesis in the realm of obscurity. In addition, if this obscurity is what science extends you as palette to paint your imagination, nothing better, it gives you a reasonably confident basis. We have a word that we use very cheekily in common parlance called entanglement. Science gives this word to us in somehow very interesting and also obscure domain. Quantum physicists use the term entanglement in a rather interesting connotation. It says, when two atoms are closely associated, they are in a state of entanglement. They say, take the two hydrogen atoms for example and take them to the opposite ends of the universe, about 42 billion light-years apart. Now, change and observe the state of one of those electron spin, and the electron of the entangled atom on the other side of the universe is changed at that same Planck interval. This means, light speed does not regulate everything after all, as information from one entangled atom to another one reached in almost fractions of a second, whereas the fastest thing in the universe, the light, would have taken at least 42 billion years to reach the same distance. In common language, we would say, it was like the speed of consciousness, our mind, which only has this speed to attain that. Scientists say, this exactly shows, in quantum realism, that information, distinctly describable bits of information, can be communicated without needing to adhere to Einstein's rule about light speed. Do not get puzzled and troubled. This energy is not always required to deny you the right to play with this energy and use it as a feedstock of mysticism, artistry as well as philosophizing. This is the real joy of it. Science and philosophy has this beautiful symbiotic relationship. Philosophy often feeds scientific quests, and scientific quests often are subject line of philosophizing. What we have as raw stock for philosophizing are two words, entanglement and communication. What we can think of entanglement and communication can take infinite meanings. What we are attempting to philosophize about is an aspect of life and living that somehow suits to both the terms in a single framework. We are taking about the two entangled entities of our consciousness and intuitiveness. The two identities of consciousness and intuitiveness are almost like two sides of a coin. If a tail comes, you have a situation, but there always remains a potential of head and its resultant situationalism in one's life, and both are inextricably entangled. The toss of tail always affects the untapped potential of heads and vice versa. Similarly, The call of consciousness in a particular life and living situation always affects the potential and probabilities of the entangled call of intuitiveness. In our lives, we are usually intuitive. Therefore, we also somehow unconsciously decide the eventualities of what could have been, had we listened to and acted according to a conscious choice. One choice instantly shapes the eventualities of other choice, and for this to happen, you do not need any medium of communication, as both are entangled such a way that both in finality are in total singularity of mind mechanism. There is a famous quote of a very great man, which reflects this entanglement. He said, "There is virtually no doing that you would not consider undoing, and the vice versa, and even regret doing or undoing after it is past you, but still, the momentary pride and utility of the doing and undoing almost always makes it happen or unhappen." And this is the obscure joy of life and living choices. What we are attempting to bring about, through this illustration of entanglement of intuitive and conscious minds, is something related with our destinies, which unfolds to us, and we call it God's will. What we wish to point out is, at any point of time and space, we are only half of our actual potential, as the other half is always in the realm of obscurity with a feeling of still being at the door of it. It is because a choice we make in our life is entangled with another choice, which we could have made but did not make. However, unconsciously, we still remain entangled to this another probability, which may some time later present us with another possibility. What intuitive self does or undoes, opens up the dimensions of what consciousness could do or undo, and the vice versa. Life and living choice is always seen to be half opportunity and half potential, or half success, half failure, or half joy, half regret. When we make a choice, we attain something, which essentially is blocking the probabilities to take any other shape. However, it is like opting a tail of the coin. The alternative entangled option of heads still remains open, and its probabilities shall unleash its energies sometime later, when we shall not even be aware. It has to affect our destiny, as this open option is entangled part of our being. What usually happens is, we opt for or get either a head or a tail in life. Nobody can get both at the same time. If we get tail, this opens up the gates of set of probabilities, which we ourselves have energized and are prepared for. However, the head was an entangled probability. As tail probabilities take off and we get focused on its manifestation, the entangled probabilities of heads remain hidden and dormant. But these probabilities are not dead, as they are entangled. Realisms of the other option. They shall surface up later, and as we have forgot or ignored these probabilities, they would seem to us like God's will, when they shall surface. Almost all things we consider important for us, are in varying degrees of entanglement with each other, and each one dimension automatically affects other. Secondly, most entanglements have communication linkages, and they speak in a language we either do not understand or happily ignore. There is a systemic causality, which surrounds us and communicates with a purpose. We often fail to pick them up. Blaming it on the fast speed of life and innumerous pressures on us is no solution. We all have to develop the art of understanding this entanglement in all walks of our life and living, especially that between consciousness and intuitiveness. In addition, we have to be emotionally as well as intelligently at it to listen to and understand the communication going on between the entangled entities. That shall help us in making much more informed and well-poised life and living choices, making us the masters of our destinies. We need to accept that this entangled probabilities and communication between them are brilliant patterns, which we all usually ignore or do not factor in our life living preparedness. These patterns are a huge segment of our destiny. If we take into account these patterns, we shall have larger excellence in shaping our destinies with our personal inputs. Such is the arrangement of this universe and everything around us, that they are in varying degrees of the state of entanglement, and the communication between all these are in the air. Doing, undoing, Joying and regretting are endemic part of the entangled life of play. However, maximizing joys and minimizing regrets is our core business and also our core competence. We are human after all. Understanding the multidimensionality of the world around us and accepting the multidimensionality of knowledge makes us achieve that. We can do it. We must. The quantum of life quintessentiality. The study of quantum mechanics is garnering lots of attention and curiosity of scientists. Good it would have been if they could come up with a generality of the mechanics for common person's lives. The quantum mechanics, it seems, has lot to offer as it looks like a leap of science towards assimilation of all wisdoms. It also has lot to offer in terms of scientific spiritualism. The term may sound stupidity for now. The best part of quantum reality is its emotional proximity with nature and life in general. It offers patterns for understanding the randomization of the multidimensionality of a hugely probabilistic energy called nature. It seems like a definitive perspective on the myriad colors of consciousness, which is a huge facility for us to understand the patterns all around us, which either land us in loss or profit, success or failure. Asymmetrical and somewhat randomized causality is the most common, widely prevalent element in nature and even most precious human attainment. It is a natural bequeathal to all, thanks beloved nature. What we shall talk below is the fact that now, the humanity has the knowledge about strange but ubiquitous causality and cyclicality of almost everything around us. First time in the history of humanity, we have come to a stage of knowledge, where we have begun to unravel the interesting and magical details of the mechanism called the cosmos and its elements around us. We now also have the knowledge about how our own consciousness operates in beautifully complex mechanisms, which is a microcosm of the cosmic complexities. This helps us a lot in unraveling our destinies as we can now decipher much of the prevailing patterns of the mechanism of God's world, which landed us in the uncertainties of randomized probabilities, which we called God's will. As scientists say, some aspects of quantum mechanics can seem counterintuitive, because they describe behavior quite different than that seen at larger length scales. Many types of energy, such as photons, behave in some respects like particles and in other respects like waves. Interestingly, quantum mechanics theory ordains that the more closely one pins down one measure, such as the position of a particle, the less precise another measurement pertaining to the same particle, such as its momentum, must become. Put another way, measuring position first and then measuring momentum does not have the same outcome as measuring momentum first and then measuring position. The act of measuring the first property necessarily introduces additional energy into the microsystem being studied, thereby perturbing that system. Even more disconcerting is the quantum notion that pairs of particles can be created as entangled twins. It means that a measurement, which pins down one property of one of the particles, will instantaneously pin down the same or another property of its entangled twin, regardless of the distance separating them. We have talked about it above. On the face value, it seems no better way to describe and understand life, its absurdities and its relationship with the cosmic realism that most humans live to die unresolved. The quantum thing is a great learner. Accept the absurdity, at least as metaphor aimed at paradigm building for larger wellness. Consider attainments of life. As the quantum mechanics says, when you get into a position of this particle, attainments, the momentum of it, resultant satisfaction, becomes less precise for measurement. We usually believe, getting into a position of an attainment shall make us equally positioned to calculate its momentum, the flow of joys and satisfaction. Another beautiful absurdity of quantum mechanics is, measuring attainments first and then measuring satisfaction is not the same as calculating satisfaction first and then measuring attainments. We generally think it is a two-way equal process. This we are talking about to bring up the idea that somewhere, we have been at some fault in calculating the hidden and intangible patterns in our lives. The quantum mechanics present novel dimensions to life-living situations. Sample another brilliance of this quantum thing. If you get to measure one goodness of a particle in attainment, you instantaneously get to measure same or related goodness in an attainment which is an entangled twin. Quantum thing says, photon behaves sometimes as particle and sometimes as waves. We all seem to do the same. Love sometimes behaves as compassion, sometimes as consumption, wild and untamed like nature but with a defined pattern, unpredictably beautiful and still devastating. All this unravels how intricate and colossal is the mechanism that we are and we live in. It is only very natural that such a mechanism unravels itself in hugely large and complicated processes. The patterns these processes engender may seem beyond perception of an average person, as much of the patterns are intangible and operated in our subconscious mind domain. However, if we first come to accept that there are discernible patterns of life-living probabilities and we can decipher them, half the task is accomplished. We can then work towards attaining a higher consciousness, which is adept at deciphering these patterns. Then, we have the road marked for our journeys. We can then have larger personal inputs in our destinies. Some of the destinies may be assigned to God, as it shall be good for our peace and prosperity. However, most of our destinies we can make. We have the potential within us. The vacuum shapes your realism. In trying to discover the physical basis of consciousness, it may first be helpful to consider the physical structure of the universe from which consciousness somehow arises. Everything that we see or otherwise perceive is comprised of quanta that are best described as energy waves oscillating as excitations or disturbances of the quantum vacuum. In the view of some physicists, it is the vacuum which is fundamental rather than the quanta. These waves of energy are seen as excitations of the more fundamental vacuum. The quantum vacuum is not a void or nothingness, but could better be described as a plenum, as being full of virtual particles or photons that leap in and out of existence, and whose existence can be made permanent by the presence of energy, such as the energy of an extreme gravitational field or equivalent acceleration. Some physicists are at pains to emphasize the existence of the quantum vacuum as a reality rather than an abstraction. We can say, our lives are just like that. We are a microcosmic model of the cosmos. In our lives, we too have a large vacuum, which we consider as useless and focus more on a small particle called self. The vacuum is not actually nothing, it is far more important. Our consciousness is shaped and guided more by the excitations and disturbance of this vacuum. What this vacuum is? It is a huge intangible world where different intangible and virtual waves of abstract ideas and emotions are created and destroyed. It is up to you. It is the choice of your life positioning, which creates a gravitational curve, which in turn makes this wave to collapse into a subjective reality. What and which way you position your life shapes the realism for you. This realism engenders your subjective consciousness. You decide. Synchronicities et al. It is such a beautiful and yet so difficult a position to find. Arriving at such a position and situationalism is tough, and being there is tougher, but when there, it fills up the consciousness with all joys, satisfaction and exhilaration within, which nothing in this universe can. The treasure grows within and everything outside becomes redundant. It is extremely sad and unfortunate that since ages, only a handful of humans have thought of the need and utility of arriving at such a position of ultimate joy, and still lesser people actually arrive at this. They call it ordained and God's will, but this idea surely cannot be subscribed to, as God can never wish a design or mechanism, which prevents and debars anyone from the ultimate joy. This is high time humanity stops making God responsible for all his personal and subjective assumptions and weaknesses. This attitude is not only dangerous for humanity, rather it also makes the millions have wrong notions about divinity as well as human abilities and potential. It is high time humanity stops taking God for granted. We need to understand this, and we all can. Of course, it is not easy, it is very tough and needs mind training from early childhood. Lots of practice follows. One life is too little to comprehend the intricacies and perplexities of the intelligence, as well as the beautifully mystical and intricate mechanisms of the nature and the conscious life. Still, a life is good enough to arrive at the positioning from where the journey into the right direction begins. What distance towards the avowed destination one traverses may vary. Albert Einstein elaborated about this joy so beautifully. He said, "It is enough for me to contemplate the mystery of conscious life perpetuating itself through all eternity, to reflect upon the marvelous structure of the universe which we dimly perceive, and to try humbly to comprehend an infinitesimal part of the intelligence manifested in nature. Knowledge is humbling. More knowledgeable you are, more modest and humble your entire consciousness becomes. As your consciousness grows in humility, you ready yourself to open the gates of evolved innocence. And once innocence shapes and shades your consciousness and subconscious in perfect harmony, you arrive at the wisdom from where the real journey to the ultimate joy begins, and it never ends. The toughest part is the very start. Usually, most people do not have the basic thing required to make even a small beginning. The biggest trouble is, only a poised positioning of a conscious mind is the key to do so successfully, even though in bits. Most people have this poise missing, either by whisker or by huge margins. This is so difficult, and the poise is missing because the psychosis is just round the corner. Most people are in varying degrees of psychosis of mind and consciousness, and that is why they are so prone to rejecting any other knowledge or wisdom apart from what they think they know. Understanding psychosis is very important because psychosis blocks the consciousness, which has the innate ability to decipher patterns around and then create personal inputs to shape up destinies. It is crucial to understand the difference of positioning between a mind poised and a mind psychotic. As people in contemporary chaotic world may have psychotic minds and consciousness, this kills the poise required for the beginning of journey towards real pursuit of knowledge. It is said, life and realism is what you see and accept. Objective realism is one, but there are as much subjective realisms as the number of humans on this planet. A poised mind would understand this dualism and the multidimensionality of subjective realisms, and yet accept one that is as close as possible to the singular and objective realism. Psychosis is there when someone accepts only his or her fixated dimension of subjective realism as true and all others as wrong. He or she even refuses to believe that there can be many dimensions or subjective realisms. Simply, the realism he or she accepts is either a very underrated or an overrated version of realism, far off from the objective realism. This hinders the artistry of deciphering patterns of destiny. More than often, when in psychosis, the causality or the acausality of cause-effect is excessively off target. However, the person experiencing it thinks that this is perfectly reasonable and everyone else is wrong. He or she hears voices from within and feels these voices are completely real as any other thing one can hear. Experts say, the speakers are inside your head. Most psychotic people are trigger happy to call it soul voices or divine guidance. Kindly keep God out of that. At least for a while. This poise comes through the innocence of consciousness and acquired through rigorous mind training. The psychotic mind and consciousness shall always be perilous for the poise of mind. The psychotic mind is a killer of innocence and blocks the consciousness from entering the journey of ultimate joy. Let us understand the psychosis and poise of mind with the help of something, which is very powerful experience for almost every single human and is everywhere. The example of synchronicity is a huge example how normal and cherished poise is so susceptible to psychosis. Synchronicity is simply coincidence experience. It is referred as the uncanny coincidence, the unlikely conjunction of events, the startling serendipity. You think of someone for the first time in years, and run into him or her a few hours later. You go to a library looking for a rare book not available easily, and as you look dazed at thousands of books on the shelf, the book you were looking for falls out of nowhere. We have already talked about how there are hidden and intangible patterns all around us, and as we happily ignore them, there is a complete wow factor when they present themselves in some tangibility of probability. The synchronicity is one complex, beautiful and intangible patterning of the mechanism around us, and they present themselves in a way which seem like God's will or simply destiny. Let us not go on the rational and scientific explanation of the idea and action of synchronicity. Let it be the way most people love it, the mysterious and divine, the God's way to say to people that he or his angels are everywhere to help humanity and show it to humans that they exist. However, it may be very useful for a poised mind to know what a rational interpretation of synchronicity and other such so-called miracles could be. A psychotic mind would be least bothered as his or her preference for divinity would be unaffected by anything. Experts say the phenomenon of synchronicity is primarily connected with psychic conditions. Synchronicity is primarily the influence of the archetypes, those subconscious and unconscious patterns inherent in the human psyche and shared by all of mankind. There have been huge breakthroughs in understanding and interpreting the subconscious and unconscious mind as science has unraveled much of the mysteries of human consciousness. This is the new thinking we are all invited to in the current millennium. Procrastinating it shall be calamitous. Now, whether synchronicity is God's way or anything part of the larger mechanism of the cosmic realism does not anyway make any difference in how it subjectively lands different humans in varied situations and positioning. How one's mind accepts and interprets them does make the final difference. The destiny is largely a personalized realism. A poised and a psychotic mind take a single synchronicity in an entirely different way and land in different situations ultimately. Let's us understand this. Experts warn, not all synchronicities are positive. To be careful. If you are psychotic, dysfunctional, have emotional problems, and therefore are a drama person and off poise of thought and action, your synchronicity will attract and manifest dysfunctional people and events as reflections of your own inner turmoil. Do not blow them out of proportion. You must look at the bigger picture of the synchronicity, think outside the box, look at the wider patterns of reality, not at the actual experience. Let us take just two examples to make it clear what we are saying. For example, you have been feeling ill with no clear diagnosis. Suddenly, someday, out of nowhere, you meet someone who knows a doctor, a healer or a mystic with the answers. The mind, already inclined towards accepting God's hands in everything happening around his or her, is quick to accept it as miracle and divine interference. A poised mind surely does not commit or jump into a preoccupied and predetermined conclusion of mind. The poised mind shall also explore other explanations. It is now a reality that most physical problems stem from emotional issues. Gradually, more humans are falling victim of psychosomatic troubles. What happens is, or what may be accepted as alternative answer is, your subconscious self will point out and lead you to the patterns of a chain of related sequences towards solutions. Your attitude changes your future. Why not accept the proposition that when the person is ready to heal, the doctor will be invariably there? That person will often show up by synchronicity. The subconscious and unconscious self is the orchestrator. And as there is a will, the ways start to fall in place. All one has to do is keep oneself ready. Check this example: you meet someone who interests you and touches your soul. Through synchronicity, that person seems to come into your life over and over again. You begin to feel a destiny with that person. You begin to think with your heart instead of your head. You connect with that person. Finally, however, after a period of time, it proves out he was a very wrong choice. Why? The problem may not be with God's signals, but with one's subjective consciousness, which fails to see and appreciate the synchronicity in its holism and multidimensionality. A poised mind would accept everything with open and non-fixated mind. The poised mind, unlike a psychotic mind, would not reject the subjective multidimensionality of probabilistic interpretations. A poised mind would always accept holism, assimilation and integration of all subjectivities, and then, cautiously but humbly lead his or her consciousness towards an answer that shall be closest to the objective reality. This is not easy, very tough, and needs a rigorous and persevered practice to create a consciousness, which is humble, full of innocence to accept all realisms in a holistic, assimilative and integrative perspective. The knowledge leads us to this state of consciousness still. One first needs to rise above psychosis and attain the poise. The simple idea is, there are clear patterns, which unravel the way this colossal cosmos works. A mind consciousness, which is in perfect poise with all elements around and is in a receptive mode of higher consciousness to decipher these patterns, amid loads of randomized probabilities, can understand much of the intricacies of destinies, which we usually assign to God's will. This surely leads us to optimize our potentials of excellence, as we can then put in our conscious inputs into these patterns to mold our own destinies. God also shall help us. God shall better appreciate this, as his design of mechanism called the cosmos is neutral and all probabilities are open for all. Those who understand his mechanism come up with personalized inputs, should ideally be dearer to God, as he or she has done his or her karma, which all religions say, God appreciates and accepts as best human duty. Beyond this talk, in the 6 other ebooks, which this unworthy friend of yours has created for you, the descriptions of which I have provided below, we have talked in details about different aspects of cosmic mechanism and life and living realisms, with focus on individual and subjective empowerment to optimize potentials for larger wellness and excellence. They shall help you evolve and design your own subjective and personalized model of wellness wisdom. These ebooks shall also help you optimize your potentials in day-to-day life and living. In each ebook, one aspect of life and living problems and troubles has been talked about in detail for easy and smooth understanding of an average reader. There too, we talk like friends. The efforts are directed at understanding the core mechanism and processes of life and living realisms in a novel approach, with holistic, assimilative and integrative perspective. This takes all good aspects of all wisdoms, old and new, and assimilates them for larger wellness and excellence of individuals. I affectionately invite you to go through the sample pages of these ebooks. Moreover, as your friend, I am always at your side to elaborate on any issue, which you might have with you. We can talk and share more on them. You can mail me if you have any query, or if you wish to know more on any aspect of issues discussed in the ebooks. I shall always treasure your communication and shall be very prompt and supportive in my response. All my efforts are directed at generating larger wellness with all people, with whom I share this beautiful earth. I share with you what I have internalized. It is such a huge privilege and joy for me. As I have already mentioned, I also learn and unlearn from you and all people with whom I share my consciousness. Give me this precious chance to learn and unlearn from you. Accept my gratitude. Being in absolute reception of love wins all fears, makes us rise above the process of preparedness to the ultimate stage of readiness. In this consciousness, all good and cherished ideals of humanity fall in our lap. They fill our being. Love lands us to ultimate empowerment of forgiveness. I most humbly say, I am in innocent reception of the perpetuity of utility of love amid life's futility. That is why I could muster up the courage to talk to you. I am happily sure you shall forgive your unworthy friend for his stupidities. Thank you so much for being with me and allowing me to share with you. Wish you an empowered life, with the prosperity of the consciousness, which shall make you a genius problem solver and optimize your potentials. Santosh Jha. About your unworthy friend. People say, what conspire to make you what you finally become are always behind the veil of intangibility. Someone called it intangible effectors. Inquisitiveness was the soil I was born with, and the seeds these intangible effectors planted in me made me somewhat analytical. My long stint in media, in different capacities as journalist, as brand professional and strategic planning, conspired too. However, I must say it with all innocence at my behest that the chief conspirators of my making have been the loads of beautiful and multidimensional people, who traversed along me, in my life journey so far. The mutuality and innocence of love and compassion always prevailed and magically worked as the catalyst in my learning and, most importantly, unlearning from these people. Unconsciously, these amazing people also worked out to be the live theaters of my experiments with my life's scripts. Sharing with you all what I have here, is essentially my very modest way to express my gratitude for all of them and you, who affectionately shared my consciousness here. In my stupidities is my innocence of love for all my beautifully worthy conspirators. Other smashwords titles by Santosh Jha. Naked Solutions of Dressed Up Life Woes. Non-fiction, Empowering Consciousness, Life Wellness, Personal Excellence, Word, 23,000 approximately. Short description. The world we live in, is what it is, neither good nor bad. It is people, who are the theatre of all pains as well as joys. The human mind is the most capable and instinctively galvanized mechanism to solve big problems. Still, the same human consciousness is the most potent trouble. The core trouble is, modern-day problems are so dressed up, partly by our complex environment and partly by our consciousness, that we fail to see the naked reality of the nature of problems. We can see them clearly, if we undress them. It is an art we all can master. How? Extended description. A solution of problems is not a big task. If you have a problem, you already know it. That solution is somewhere inherent and embedded in the problem itself. The milieu around us presents some factors in an arrangement which stand in our disadvantage at a particular stage of our life positioning, and we call the outcome of such an arrangement as a problem. Often, solution presents itself as some alternative arrangement or placement of the same factors in such a way that they turn advantageous for us, hence qualifying as a solution. In most cases, especially the modern-day problems we face, the artistry of arriving at solutions is not in creating or generating something externally, but in rearranging and repositioning the already present factors and elements in some alternative ways. That is why we need little action, but loads of calm and objective reception in analyzing the factors that essentially constitute a problem. We talk like friends about the mechanisms of problems and solutions in an assimilative and integrative way. DAGs. Empowerment, higher consciousness, problem solving, self-exploration, mind positioning, receptive mode awareness, life randomization, multidimensionality of realism, new thinking, true intelligence, personal assimilation and integration, holistic worldview, symbiotic subconscious, sensory symmetry, psychological poise, unlearning, wisdom, generic and specific subject, relationship realisms, love and wellness, winning genius, habitual hero, the art of winning. Non-fiction, empowering consciousness, life wellness, personal excellence, word, 19,000 approx, language English. Short description. In all of us, there is this definite winner, the genius of this universe. However, this champion is what we can label as random warrior, as it wins but not always. We all have the determination, patience, courage, discipline and the mastery to be a sure and sustained all-weather all-season hero? However, as many of us miss the knowledge and acceptance of this mechanism of winning, this warrior turns out to be only a random winner, unable to sustain the artistry of winning, to qualify as a habitual hero. Extended description. There is a definite hero in all of us. We all have an inbuilt and natural ability, a born facility, which makes us eligible for understanding the mechanism of winning. The only trouble is, eligibility is not automatic qualification. All of us are born with the facility called instinctive inquisitiveness. This is our born eligibility. However, we need to orient and align our inquisitiveness towards objective knowledge to qualify as an intelligent person, who is the master of mechanism. And not only the puppet of mechanism. It is the mind consciousness, which makes us a random warrior. And it is the same mind, which holds the potential of we being the all-weather and all-season hero. The cherished pole position, for which we all have born eligibility. We talk like friends about this mechanism of being a habitual hero in an assimilative and integrative way. Tags. Empowerment, higher consciousness, mechanism of winning, self-exploration, mind positioning, receptive mode awareness, life randomization, multidimensionality of realism, new thinking, true intelligence, personal assimilation and integration, holistic worldview, symbiotic subconscious, sensory symmetry, psychological poise, unlearning, wisdom, generic and specific subject, relationship realisms, love and wellness. Maya and Leela, utility in life's futility. Non-fiction, empowering consciousness, life wellness, personal excellence, word, 21,000 approx, language English. Short description. Most of us, living in modern contemporary world of complexities, conflicts and confusion, have questions as what a good and righteous person should consider as perpetual utility in life, amidst the general feeling of futility of everything around. What is this singular life and living positioning, which can make us live the life in a perpetually joyous state of consciousness, endowed with true utilities, shunning away all those futilities which land us in pain and regret? Extended description. Almost everything which has a utility at one stage of life stands a good chance of qualifying for futility later. For all thinking people, the larger conflict of life and living experiences is unraveled and expressed in multidimensional cyclicality of utility and futility. The inquisitive mind and its curious energy cannot leave a thinking person to rest in perpetuity of peace, as the world we live in is colossal and the questions of life and living conflicts and conundrums are infinite. However, we all need to be sure that this unsettling energy of conflict is a huge gift, not a burden. Hundreds of years back, the old wisdom, spiritualism and philosophy offered us sure answers, but in time, they have lost trust with us somehow, as they seem to somehow misfit with modern ideas. We shall talk like friends about these issues in the light of a new thinking, which assimilates and integrates all wisdoms, spiritualism, philosophy and science. Being in true utilities of life is essential, as it lands us in perpetuity of infinite joy and wellness. Tags. Empowerment, higher consciousness, utility and futility, karma, self-exploration, mind positioning, receptive mode awareness, life randomization, multidimensionality of realism, new thinking, true intelligence, contemporary spiritualism, assimilation and integration, holistic symbiotic wisdom, sensory symmetry, psychological poise, unlearning, wisdom, generic and specific subject, immortality, life purpose and purity. Why we flop in love. Non-fiction, empowering consciousness, life wellness, personal excellence, word, 20,000 approx, language English. Short description. Love is ideally accepted with three elements of mystery, magic and marvel. The three M's. land most of us in inexplicable troubles and pains of love. The magnificent dualism is, love's mystery makes it flamboyantly attractive and joyful. Still, the mysticism engenders loads of confusion, making many of us flop in love. Success of love is in non-dualistic positioning, which is simple and practical realism, most of us refuse to accept. Extended description. The dualism is in the mysticism, magic and marvel of love. This mysticism of love is what most lovers get attracted to initially. This suits the consciousness of love. This marvel of love gives the men and women huge kicks of life. Young minds get huge thrills in journeying amidst the mist of mysticism of love, as precariousness of the enterprise always has its own joy. Similar is the human desire, when it comes to religion and spiritualism. Mysticism is preferred state here too. However, this mysticism further confuses those in love and faith, and this confusion in turn leads to calamitous patterns of behaviors and actions in love. The resultant pain and chaos is cyclic. However, the new thinking explains hitherto unexplored aspects of the physical, biochemical, emotional and other mechanisms and processes of love, as human mind handles them, in a holistic, assimilative and integrative way. This surely takes away lots of mysticism, magic and marvel out of the age-old notion of love and archetypal imagery of love in society. However, it is hugely helpful in clearing the mist of confusion and chaos around the very core idea of love. This surely makes us be successful in love and relish true love and absolute intimacy. Tags: love, intimacy, wellness, homeostasis, poise, magic, marvel, dualism and non-dualism, empowerment, higher consciousness, mechanism of winning, self-exploration, mind positioning, personal assimilation and integration, holistic worldview, unlearning, wisdom, subjectivism, relationship realisms, wisdom of wellness, perpetuity of poise of purpose, non-fiction, empowering consciousness, life wellness, personal excellence, word, 20,000 approx, language English. Short description: one needs to be in lasting physical, emotional and ideational wellness. Tips, bills, and shots abound. Still, wellness is elusive. Wellness is largely a function of emotional poise, of consciousness. Wisdom of wellness is in being the master of mechanism, internalizing the multifaceted life-living realisms and then creating a personalized model of wellness. Nothing external helps. Long description: wellness is a function of wider poise of person and personality, which includes factors not only material but also emotional. A person is in complete wellness when there is an overall poise between the cognitive factors such as income, wealth, comfort, leisure and health, as well as emotional factors such as trust, security, integration with family, friends, colleagues, connectivity, communication, stability, sense of desirability and spiritual purpose, etc. We live in a modern complex world, where cognitive elements of good life are improving considerably. However, as emotional elements of life and living are largely unsettled and conflicted, most of us fail to hit the road of the perpetuity of poise for larger wellness. Wellness involves a large spectrum of poise in multidimensional domains: the spiritual, physical, mental, social and emotional. Moreover, the emotional and spiritual aspect of wellness is far more complex than the cognitive ones, as they are the intangibles of life. Wellness is a dynamic idea. It is a goal of life, for which we all need to strive every day. Wellness is not a static state. It is not like wealth, which we acquire once and keep it for long. It requires ongoing attention and timely intervention to the details of evolving social, spiritual and physical life. Wellness as a holistic notion of physical, emotional as well as ideational prosperity does not mean only lack of impediments to good life, but also having loads of ingredients of good life. For wellness, positivity is far more crucial than simple lack of negativity. Wellness is well within the reach of all of us, yet we all need to constantly redefine ourselves as well our notion of wellness, as our minds and bodies evolve to optimize capacities and excellence. Wellness is essentially a consciousness positioning. It is not an external or tangible entity, which one can create like wealth. Wellness is a poise of consciousness, which is engendered when we have all elements of our life, physical, emotional, ideational and material, in perfect harmony and symmetry with each other. We are ourselves a very complex mechanism. The world we live in has also become hugely complicated and conflicted. The cosmic realism is awesomely complex. Wellness poise needs to connect with all these and then strike a lasting poise. This poise is not static but dynamic, constantly evolving and changing. Only that person can attain perfect wellness and remain in perpetuity of it, who understands all the mechanisms in details and then uses the wisdom to create a wellness model for himself or herself. We talk in details here, how the old wisdom still has lot to offer to our wellness needs and how we all can create our own personalized and subjective model of wellness, taking ideas from old as well as new wisdoms of humanity. This shall make all of us to be the master of mechanism of wellness. Tags: wellness, wisdom, revisiting religion, new spiritualism, consciousness, cognition, causality, contemporary common sense, empowerment, karma, self-exploration, higher consciousness, mind positioning, receptive mode awareness, life randomization, multidimensionality of realism, new thinking, true intelligence, personal assimilation and integration, holistic worldview, symbiotic subconscious, sensory symmetry, mind-body poise, unlearning, generic and specific subject. Youth sanity in crazy culture. Short description in contemporary culture of hypocrisy, conflict and confusion, where even adults are in a flux over benchmarks of real success and self-worth, the young being advised about sanity and sensibility, lands as big joke for them. The youth needs a worldview, enabling them to see through the hypocrisy and perplexity of pop culture, offering them a date with real intelligence and life realism. Detailed description. As a youngster looks around, loads of conflicts and hypocrisies pop up everywhere, be it society, culture, economy or politics. The youth are told to follow a number of ideals and goodness. The youngsters shall seldom accept them as, firstly, they have doubts over their utility. Secondly, it is always easy for them to decipher that all these expectations from them have perceptible elements of hypocrisy and conflicts of interests. It does not take a genius to see through it. They can see that they are asked to keep away from alcohol and drugs, whereas, everywhere in society and popular culture, people young and old are deep down into it. They are asked to keep away from sex, but everywhere, everyone seems to be indulging in it and almost all things around them have sexual overtones to it. They are told to be calm and cool in a societal space, where gun culture and rage is calamitously growing. This hypocrisy is so open and clearly visible all around that it is impossible for them to accept the prescriptions against their utility, as one huge futility. Very clearly, this is no solution. The solution is in knowledge of objective and neutral realities. The solution is in a worldview of holism, and not that of parts. The trouble of all mechanisms, which are offered to youth as educational or prescriptive tools for eliciting appropriate action behavior benchmarks from them is, they are all only part facts and knowledge. They are shown only half a picture of life living realism as it is believed. They either cannot understand the full picture, or it shall be dangerous or inappropriate to give them the whole picture. Dare show them the full picture, and see how it works and wins. Tags: sanity, life aesthetics, populism, cultural hypocrisy, dualism of idealism, prudence and proportion, leadership, mechanisms, markets and media, evolution, male-female bonding, mechanism of sexuality, deciphering patterns, life living excellence, consciousness, systemic neutrality, poison psychosis, life goals, optimizing potential. Back to bliss, a journey to zero. Literary fiction, novel, a love story in catalytic contemporary culture of conflicts, word 78,000 approx, language English. Short description. Battling against hypocrisies, sadomasochism and perfunctory pursuits of pop benchmarks of successes, he refuses the passion-oriented male worldview of karma and life's purposes. Metamorphosed by compassion, that love's innocence fills him with, he opts for a journey that takes him far away from the stupidity of self-worth, calculated in terms of personal utility, individualistic possession and unfettered consumption. Does he arrive? Extended description. Mayank Misra, a 34-year-old news editor with a newspaper in an Indian city, takes up the challenges in his personal as well as professional lives, caught between the conflicting agendas of passion and compassion. His passion calls him to battle the hypocrisies, which the popular benchmarks of the societal notions fill up his professional as well as personal universe with. Then, the innocence of love and total intimacy exposes him to compassion, leading him to diametrically opposite life energies, marked by forgiveness. He realizes, he's standing beyond the best of the potentials and capabilities of his accultured and uninhibited mind as his own God, but he needs an unlearning mechanism to delete the wrong programming of his mind. In the contemporary worldview, which paints the hypocrisy of art and lies about idealisms, he templates sketches of heroic moments of personal crises to break free from the suffocation of the optionlessness of pop success, with humble reception of the sanity of simplicity and innocence. How he manages his personal and societal conflicts, rises above his encumbrances and finally picks up a road less traversed for a journey, which makes him feel he has already arrived, sums up the novel. Tags. Literary fiction, love story, media ills, corporate conundrums, behavioral corruption, personal and societal conflicts, pop pursuits, hypocrisy, sadomasochism, success benchmarks, heroic crisis, compassion, intimacy, innocence of love, gender neutrality, unlearning in love, accultured mind, metamorphosis, forgiveness, sanity of simplicity, life journey, optionlessness, arriving. Do kindly write to me. stwrite@mail.com. A true friend is just an effective catalyst, facilitating a series of learning and unlearning, by optimizing painful processes. Perpetuity of affection and compassion, a hallmark of friendship, is one brilliant utility in life's futility. As your friend, I shall always be in complete reception of your ideas and emotions and shall cherish the utility of communicating with you to expand the universe of mutual wellness. Thank you so much. Connect with Santosh Jha. Facebook, https://www.facebook.com/profile.bhp, ID =1000327821351 to Google+, https://plus.google.com/101687486477685032755/posts. Partner @ogb0 blog, http://zerostick.blogspot.in Smashwords, https://www.smashwords.com/profile/view/Santosh Jha.